Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the ADA Masterclass. We're going to be talking about ADA compliance for bottle fillers and drinking fountains. We'll be doing that for 60 minutes, although Hayden and I get a little excited about compliance and ADA standards, and we really like diving into this stuff. So we'll try to keep it at 60 minutes. We do have a Q&A built into the end, so if we do go a little tight on time, Hayden and I are just going to hang out at the end and do a Q&A. So feel free to stick around for that, but I'll kind of prompt you later on how that's going to work. Thank you, first and foremost, for being here and for attending this. We greatly appreciate your time and your interest in this subject. We continue to revamp this and add more information and continue to spread the word of compliance. So keep in mind, as I move through the presentation, that the requirements that I'm going to be covering and Hayden is going to be covering, who's my partner in crime, I'll introduce you to him in a moment, apply to many types of equipment, not just drinking fountains, but again, that is our focus today, is bottle fillers and drinking fountains. Okay. Also consider that some of you have your own state and local laws that also have to be adhered to. So ensure that those are taken into consideration. State and local standards must be more strict than what is currently in place at the federal level, which is what we're digging into today, the federal standard for compliance. Now, my name is Justin Dunn. I'm the field marketing manager here at Haws. That's my face and my email. Feel free to keep that if you have questions or if you have any need to reach out and interact with Haws and our company. I'm happy to be a resource for you. With me, and I'll have him say hi, is Hayden Delgado.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm the specification manager for Haws, and thank you all for joining us for our first ADA webinar of the year.
And that is Hayden's email there. If you need him, he manages the heck out of those specifications. So please feel free to reach out to either one of us if you need anything at all. Now, please, you'll notice in the top right-hand corner, there's a little box with a question mark in it. That's the question section of the control panel. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in there, and we'll try to get them at the end of the webinar. Any questions that I can't be addressed during the Q&A, I will be answering those via email. I'll put them in a nice, neat Excel format or Word format document and shoot those out to you. So you guys have the questions and answers for the whole webinar. Okay. We are also going to be launching poll questions. So please, there's 5 of them. We would love your participation in them. They help us greatly to improve this product, to get insight into what brought you here and what your motivations are, so that we can fine tune this presentation, this product for you. Okay. So we greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much. Now, a follow-up email will be sent within 24 to 48 hours after the presentation, and it's going to include the on-demand recording, presentation slides, but not in a PowerPoint format. Additional support materials, CEU instructions. So if you are here for continuing education units, and you want those credits, ABIH, AIA, IFMA, and ASPE, or we have a general attendance certificate if you would like one for the webinar. All of those instructions will be in the follow-up email. Okay, and I look forward to your questions after the webinar about exactly what I just covered. There will also be the Q&A document after the webinar too, so you'll have access to all that information. Now, just a very quick tidbit about us as a company. And after we get through the agenda here in a moment, we'll cover the ADA, we'll dig into it and its origins and everything. But I wanted to talk about our founder real quick, Luther Haws, the good-looking gentleman there on the bottom left with that sweet mustache. That is the gentleman that invented the world's first sanitary drinking fountain bubbler head in 1906. This was amidst the ban the cup movements. Publicly, germ theory was brand new. but we were starting to get insight into into that germ theory and the fact that we were spreading our germs from device to device. And at the time, the public drinking cup ruled the streets. It was a cup. You could get a very nice cup on a very fancy chain. And it did not help the fact that we were spreading germs from mouth to mouth. And you would fill that cup up from a fountain and drink it and then drop it. And the next person would come up and use that same cup. And there was a huge issue with that, obviously. I mean, cholera, typhoid fever, dysentery, all of which were potentially fatal at the time, was spreading from mouth to mouth. And lucky for us, Luther put his very inventive mind to task and he found a solution that has continued to benefit public health and safety to this day. Okay, his actual first prototype for the drinking fountain bubbler head, I always thought was funny. It was his bedpost. He had his brass bedpost, disassembled it and utilized it for his first prototype. Haws also responsible for developing the first electric water coolers back when they were dropping off like your daily ice block that would go inside of your drinking fountain, and you'd have a trough so the water could flow away and etc. The electric drinking fountain and cooling fountain was something developed by Haws. We also had the first line of standardized accessible fountains and pioneered the bottle filler category back when nobody cared, right? It was tough from a sales standpoint to sneak bottle fillers onto a project. And now, I mean, you can't throw a rock without hitting a project that has bottle fillers on it. Um, so we've had a very long history with hydration, public sanitation that we are very proud of here at Haws. And I think that uniquely situates us to talk about the ADA guidelines and what is entailed there. So our office is located in Sparks, Nevada, where we are working tirelessly to improve the health and safety of our global community. And with that little tidbit, we're going to cover the agenda. So today, overview of ADA legislation for drinking fountains, common ADA installation issues, some of the stuff that we find out in the wild, just to give you some basic understanding of some of the things that can go wrong. ADA compliant drinking fountain and bottle filler installations, hygienic hydration solutions, and a that Q&A there at the end of the webinar. Now, as we get into the ADA legislation for drinking fountains and for bottle fillers, and for many other items, honestly, you'll find in the ADA there's a drinking fountain section, but the things that apply to drinking fountains and bottle fillers are spread throughout several different sections. And so, for instance, reach ranges apply to many different things, but we've gathered all that information and put it in a context so that you can understand it from a drinking fountain and bottle filler perspective. Now, before we get into that, I want everybody to remember this is the ADA legislation is civil rights legislation, okay? And it was the first major legislation to treat disability rights as a civil rights issue. And prior to the standard and its inception, accessibility was up to businesses and was a very infrequently available. People did not want to spend money to update their businesses and thought that your disability was your problem. There were no teeth in any formal requirements to provide access to buildings and grounds for an entire class of people that were being neglected. Okay, but thanks to people like Justin Dart, former head of Dart Industries, as a company responsible for brands like Tupperware, Duracell, etc., and eventually merged with Kraft, I think. He was one of the biggest advocates for the movement. He was known as the grandfather of the ADA, and he himself was disabled. Alongside other advocates, George H.W. Bush, he was the sitting president at the time and signed the Americans with Disabilities Act into law on July 26, 1990. The new act granted, and this is important, reasonable accommodations to people with disabilities and prohibited discrimination based on those disabilities, just ensuring equal access, right? everybody gets to use the equipment if it's in public. Okay, it's all a pretty rad story if you look it up. All the different protests, counter protests, all that stuff. Um, and it would be hard to believe now, but they were met with very strong resistance to the proposed changes, which is why DART went on to found the President's Committee on Employment of People with Disabilities to combat pushes to weaken the ADA. Okay. Again, there were protests, counter protests. Famously, the Capitol crawl, where many crawled the steps of the Capitol and asked to speak with the Speaker of the House to discuss the proposed changes. Jennifer Keelan Chaffins, for instance, the awesome kid there on the bottom in the bandana. Cerebral palsy was her particular affliction, but she abandoned her assisted devices and crawled up the steps of the Capitol all the way to the top. And then lastly, with everything going on, obviously they were a success. And in the end, they have fresh ink on it to seal the deal. And this is HW signing the bill into law with Evan Kemp. He was the chairman for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and Justin Dart there with him as well, and the note thanking him for his efforts. But just a quick history lesson, just to kind of kickstart this thing and let everybody know all the efforts and all the motivations behind how we got to this point, which will bring us to poll question number 1, and then we'll jump into it. Allie, if you would, she's our showrunner in the background. She'll be running the poll questions and the questions at the end.
All right. Yes, getting into our first poll question of the presentation today. What is your role when it comes to drinking fountain / hydration solutions? Please check all that apply, and if no role, please do not select. Looks like it got caught up a little bit up there, but we appreciate your participation in these. Like Justin mentioned before, they help us help you, so we really encourage participation through this whole presentation. So again, thank you. It looks like we're getting some great response. And I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks for that participation, everybody. Now, that we have the poll question out of the way, let's get started. The Americans with Disabilities Act, 28 CFR Part 36, Title 3, regarding public accommodations and commercial facilities and its requirements are enforced by none other than the Department of Justice. Okay, Title 3 is going to be our entire focus today. The following are essentially what we've assembled as the key section of this of the standard pertaining to drinking fountains, bottle fillers, and their compliance. And quickly, just remember that Title 2 covers state and local government, and Title 1 has more to do with anti-discrimination of disabled employees. I always get asked that later, so I might as well get that out of the way. Remember also that this is based on ANSI A117.1, okay? And that standard protects persons well beyond those with an inability or with difficulty walking, sensory impairment, extremes of physical size, or reaching and manipulation disabilities are all disabilities that this legislation helps to protect. And the goal of it all is universal access and design. Now, I want to kick this off by talking about section 36.403. I think the way we've put this together, the way we've assembled this presentation helps to really make this easier to understand. Okay, so you're going to hear me throw numbers like that out, 36.403, blah, 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 but I promise the order is going to make this make sense. Now, this gives us a list of priorities when making alterations to provide accessibility in a facility. And you're going to notice that in the list, drinking fountains take a pretty high priority, even over accessible parking. The entrance, the route, restrooms, public telephones, fountains, as well as parking, storage, and alarms are all high priority items and basic human necessities when navigating the world. All people everywhere need water. That is the universal necessity. It's right at the tippy top of listings of things we need to survive, and we need to ensure it's accessible to everyone in one way or the other. Our way is drinking fountains and bottle fillers. Now, Chapter 1, Section 102 just lets us know that this document contains both adult and children's requirements based on anthropometrics, which just means capabilities and measurements of the human body. Children are defined as age 12 or younger in the ADA, and that's just what this is letting us know. Chapter 2 explains that where there is a single fountain required, typically a high side fountain is what the thought process is, that there must be two fountains. Okay, one is automatically overridden into a requirement for two. Local building codes determine the number of drinking fountains that must be installed based on occupancy, secured areas, exterior areas, etc. This simply states that there must be a high fountain and a low fountain. Okay, what most people don't realize, or commonly don't realize, is that the low side fountain is not the only fountain that's designed for people with disabilities. The high side fountain is also a disabled accessible fountain, and it is designed for those with bending or stooping disabilities that may be using a walker, cane, crutches, and may not be physically able to utilize the low side fountain. Okay. Other than aesthetics, drinking fountains are not designed for able-bodied people. It's reasonable to assume that if you are able-bodied, that you can take a drink from whatever fountain you choose. So if you are installing a single fountain in your facility or in a park, you must satisfy this requirement and install a second fountain. They don't even need to be like next to each other. They can be separated or at either end of a hallway, but they both must be present and equally accessible. Now, 211.3 is referred to very simply as the 50-50 rule, and it simply states that half of the units shall be high and the other half shall be low fountains. For example, if you are installing 6 new fountains in a building, you couldn't do like 4 high fountains and only 2 low fountains. You have to provide 3 high and 3 low. The exception to this rule is where you have the number of fountains and it yields a fraction. In another example, given the previous requirement, we will assume that you have met the minimum number of drinking fountains for the property and you have decided to add an additional drinking fountain, giving you 7 total fountains. That 7th fountain can be either high or low. It's entirely up to you. So long as you have 3 high, 3 low, you've met the 50-50 rule and the minimum number of fountains required for the facility, you can do whatever you want to do with the last fountain. It is above and beyond the minimum, and it does not need to meet the 50-50 rule if it is above and beyond. Although we do suggest you not like satisfy the minimum, put in 3 high, 3 low, and then like an additional 8 high drinking fountains, even it out. Equal access. Now, in Chapter 3, we start getting into dimensional and mechanical elements. And you're going to hear me use that term, elements, a bunch of times in the presentation. An element can be any of the devices that we are granting access to. This can be drinking fountains, phones. Well, phones is a little dated, but you get the point. Fire extinguishers, changing tables, and so forth and so on. Many of the measurements, again, that we're going to cover apply to more than just drinking fountains, right? That applies to a whole array of different items, but our focus is drinking fountains. Now, this is one of the most important measurements and the easiest to remember. Like if you were going to rattle off the standards, this is probably the first measurement that would come to mind. And unfortunately, very frequently what's being violated in tearouts. Now, 305.3 and 0.5 detail clear ground space to accommodate the wheelchair underneath the fountain, allowing for an approach that's unobstructed to the fountain. You must provide a 30-inch by 48-inch space of clearance underneath the element, which is just larger than your typical adult-sized wheelchair, giving the user as much clear floor space for the wheelchair as possible and for their hands to maneuver the wheelchair into that space. And as you know, if you've ever had to use a wheelchair, that can be restrictive based on the situation and navigating a building. Now here is an example that clearly demonstrates that clear ground space we just defined in front of the element. In this case, we have a telephone and a fire extinguisher. 305.5 explains that the positioning of that clear ground space, allowing for either a forward approach, like the one you see on the left, or a parallel approach, like you see on the right. Either or is perfectly acceptable. However, again, reference your local requirements. There are some interesting rules out there based on adult or children's height fountains and the preference for the approach. In particular, children's height and a parallel approach is very often the preference uh, at the state and local level. Now, remember that all these measurements, they're bare minimums. Okay, the more space that you can provide, the better. When the element, though, is in an alcove, like in the examples above, wheelchair users are going to need additional space. And to maneuver that wheelchair, and the clear floor space changes based on both the depth of the alcove and the type of approach that we're attempting. So in our first example, our 30 by 48 inches becomes 36 by 48 inches when the depth of that alcove exceeds 24 inches. And in the second example, a very similar situation for a parallel approach, when the depth of the alcove exceeds 15 inches, then our clear floor space must be 30 by 60 inches. More and more states are requiring the use of alcoves. It's the future. It's what everybody should do, in my opinion. Remove those obstacles, those items and elements from the path of travel. I think that's excellent, and more so that's becoming the requirement, and it just makes sense for them to be out of the way. Now, extending up from that clear ground space that we defined, we have our toe and knee clearance. Okay, so try to think of this clear area as a three-dimensional space. Our toe clearance is 9 inches from the ground to the bottom of the element, specifically talking about when you have the wedge style or electric water cooler style of drinking fountain or item there. This could also be applied to desks and other such devices in public. And our knee clearance is 27 inches from the ground up to the bottom of the bowl or the leading edge. Obstructions in that yellow highlighted area are another unfortunate common compliance issue. And I've got some great examples coming up that we've found out there. Now, the space underneath must be clear, and that includes any space between the victim's knees. So think about like P-traps, again, a little dated, but hanging phone books, but anything that is in that space, that's not going to work, okay? Completely unusable, which will bring us to poll question number 2.
All right, getting into our second poll question of the master class. Which of the following is most important when it comes to your filter choice? We have capacity, PFAS removal, lead removal, taste, odor removal. Awesome. We're getting some great feedback. Again, thank you all for participating. We greatly appreciate it. Good news is we have 3 more poll questions after this. So again, thank you everyone for participating, and I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll. Back to you, Justin.
Awesome. That was a little over, I think, 100 participants. It's awesome. Thank you so much. Now, protrusion limits. This is section 307, okay, and is primarily in place to protect another type and member of the protected class that we haven't fully touched on yet, and that class is the visually impaired, okay? Elements may only protrude into a walkway so much and must be located at certain heights, whether they're in an alcove or not, okay? This is to prevent anyone with a complete or partial loss of sight from running into those elements. Objects with the leading edge or the lowest point on the front of the element um, above 27 inches, okay, may only protrude a maximum of 4 inches into that path of travel, but so long as the leading edge of that element is at or 27 inches, then this is considered as detectable by a detection cane according to the DOJ. The whole purpose being to avoid collisions with elements in public spaces. Now, this is I think one of my absolute favorite examples. I like how this is arrayed. I think it really clears up what is required here. So in this example, we've got our visually impaired buddy here. He's navigating a hallway. On the bottom right, we see an object very similar in some ways to a drinking fountain. And so long as its leading edge, the leading lower edge, is at or below 27 inches, it can be detected by detection cane and early enough to avoid collision. Okay. Now this fountain and any element, so long as it's meeting the 27-inch requirement, can protrude any amount into the space. Okay. Now the same rule applies for elements at or above 80 inches of floor. That's considered headroom clearance. And can protrude any amount into that space. On the left, we have an object sitting squarely between 27 inches and 80 inches, smack dab in the middle, and therefore may not protrude into the space any more than 4 inches, with an exception for handrails, which are allowed to protrude 4.5 inches as an included exception to this rule. Now, I'm going to use these as an example real quick, the 1011 HPS and our SK3 cane skirt for the example. This is your typical dual high-low unit, typically installed in your more high traffic customer facing areas because it's shiny. And it is a great example of what your typical high-low ADA installation looks like. The SK3 cane skirt is what we want to focus on and discuss here. Where drinking fountains cannot be alcoved out of the path of travel, we use a cane skirt. And we use that to lower the leading edge of the high side fountain to 27 inches to also make this side detectable. So I want you to think about how a detection cane is used. Okay. Now, if unassisted, you don't have anybody with you, you are generally following what is referred to as a shoreline, or outermost edge of a space. Since the visually impaired may need to detect something on either side of the room, they may be traveling in either direction. And without the cane skirt in place, there will likely be incidents where people will collide with the high side fountain and can have a difficult time finding or detecting it, which is why we use the cane skirt. Many states still don't fully utilize alcoves, and until they do, cane skirts are the answer to this issue. Just remember, there's no need to overdo it with the cane skirts. You don't need an alcove in place and cane skirts on the fountain. You just one or the other is fine. Now, reach ranges. Okay, that's section 308, and it tells us another important consideration when using something like or if it is a bottle filler installed over a drinking fountain or another object. Okay. For instance, baby changing stations are a great example when put in place of something where you would have this reach range to reach it and then lower it and be able to work over it. Now, the slide is pretty straightforward. If your reach is unobstructed, like in the photo on the left, then you have a 48-inch max and 15-inch minimum reach range. There's zero obstruction. Any buttons, handles, sensors, etc. must be located within this range. But as soon as we introduce an obstruction, our reach ranges are diminished. And when an object shorter than 20 inches is in place, we keep our 48-inch high reach range, but our lower reach range disappears since we now have that fountain or a similar element in place. When reaching over an object that is 20 to 25 inches, our high reach range is shortened to only 44 inches. which makes sense. Generally speaking, drinking fountains are shorter than 20 inches. That's the standard for most manufacturers. So the middle example would be what our reach ranges are going to be. But you can imagine if the object is deeper, we have less ability to reach as high over the object as we possibly can. Okay. I had a little brother, and he was built like a redwood tree. He was a monster, and he used to do that thing where he like grab my head, and so I couldn't like get to him. And it's like that, but with bottle fillers, and you're thirsty. Now, this DOJ advisory defines reach ranges for children based on age. Okay. Now remember, children are defined as ages 12 and under in the ADA. These are all reach ranges that apply to both forward and parallel approach to an element, starting on the left. Ages 3 and 4, high 36, low 20, ages 5 to 8, high 40, low 18, and ages 9 to 12, 44, and 16. Obviously, if there's any sort of obstruction in the way, in the same way our other reach ranges work, then our low reach range is gone. It's kaput. Okay? That will not exist. Now, obviously, as they grow, as they do, like weeds frequently, their arm reach grows as well, extending their reach. So ages over 12, remember, are expected to utilize adult height drinking fountains. Okay. The only places you'll typically find children's fountains is in use in the school system, daycare facilities, any sort of facility where you have many children supervised by fewer adults. In public, the expectation is that an adult is present to assist children with fountains and other elements, okay, which is why you don't see so many in public. Now, in Chapter 6, we get into the specifics regarding plumbing elements and their measurements. First off, 602.2. This covers clear floor space and the necessity to have that clear floor space centered directly on the unit, not on the alcove. This is incredibly important. Okay, that clear space is for that unit, not the fountain as a whole. Okay, directly on the fountain or the bottle filler. So this is for a forward approach. As a parallel approach needs to be set up a little differently, but that floor space will still be centered on the object. Obviously, our toe and knee clearance must also still be available. There is an exception included here for parallel approaches to children's units, allowing a parallel approach so long as the bubbler spout is at a certain height and depth. Knee and toe clearance begins to diminish pretty quickly as we lower fountains for children's use. We bring them closer to the floor and it causes some problems. So the use of a parallel approach is very important as an option to have, especially considering that children's use wheelchairs can vary wildly in size and can even be adult wheelchairs. Custom sized wheelchairs can be expensive or sometimes inaccessible to families, and they can be pretty quickly outgrown. Although there are some that adapt as your child grows. So a parallel approach can help to solve that issue. Now this is just a really good illustration of clear floor space, how they need to be centered on the elements themselves as far as the fountain goes. Since the clear floor space is intended for the wheelchair user, it's centered on the left low side fountain. And since there's no real floor space defined in black and white, for the high side, the fountain space or floor space can spill over underneath the high side fountain as much as is needed. Okay. Many make the mistake of centering that clear floor space on the alcove, which leads to problems. Now there is a defined area for the high side fountain that we recommend to be clear, but it is not in the standard in any way, shape, or form. And Hayden will mention that here in a little bit. Last thing for me, I wanted to give you a good example here. Now you have fountains sitting in this alcove. We have a total width of 48 inches wall to wall on the inside of that alcove. It isn't deeper than 24 inches, so we don't need to expand our 30-inch clear floor space. You will notice that it shows a separate measurement for California. California has gone above and beyond and added an additional 2 inches to the floor space, bumping up the width of our floor space to 32 inches. So long as state requirements again go above and beyond, they're happy. They're great to do that. Now, centering the fountain isn't mandatory in any way, shape, or form, but it does make the installation look more pleasing. If the alcove was deeper than 24 inches, remember that we need a total of 36 inches of ground clearance to allow for more maneuverability on a forward or parallel approach. Okay, so be cautious how you're situating these fountains. Pay attention to the depth of that alcove, the necessity for the clear floor space to be centered on the unit, and to help ensure compliance. Okay. With that, we're going to go to poll question number 3, and I'm going to turn control over to my amigo here.
And getting into our third poll question of today, which of the following features would most encourage you to change or update your spec or model choice? Aesthetics, auto purge filtration features, sustainability and energy savings, ease of installation, or meets and exceeds current competitive specifications. Again, thank you so much for everyone participating. I think with every poll, we're getting more and more people participating and voting, so we greatly appreciate it. To go ahead and give back some time, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So with that, let's go ahead and hop on over to one of our last pieces of legislation. Looks like it is not allowing me to adjust that slide though, Justin.
I'll change it for now and then reissue control to you, and we'll see if that
All
works.
right. So here we have an excerpt from the California Building Code, and this made it mandatory to locate all drinking fountains in an alcove or with wing walls. And they did this in order to make sure that drinking fountains are not protruding into pedestrian walkways. Now, this is an excerpt from the California Building Code, but they are not the only state that has adopted this. A few other states have as well, such as Texas, Connecticut, and Georgia. All of those alcoves must be a minimum of 32 inches wide. They must also be 18 inches deep at a minimum. So a few of the alcove examples you've seen us show today and that we will continue to show will be that 18 inches deep. And where drinking fountains cannot be placed in an alcove, wing walls must be put in place. So if you're installing wing walls, they need to project out horizontally, at least as far as the leading edge of the drinking fountain, and to within 6 inches of the floor vertically. So now let's take a look at some common ADA installation issues. We're going to switch from the legislation now to my learning style. We're going to look at some pictures of how to do some proper installations and also what not to do. So starting with the what not to do, here we have an example of 2 high-low drinking fountains installed in an alcove. There's 2 problems with these units. Both of them actually come from the units on the left-hand side. So first off, our low side drinking fountain is installed just too close to the wall. Because of that, we don't have enough room for that 30 inches of clear floor space that we need centered under that low side drinking fountain. In order to make this compliant, like you see here in the image, we can just swap the heights of those 2 fountains, putting our low side drinking fountain more in the center of the alcove, making sure that we have plenty of clear floor space width underneath it. Our second problem has to do with the bottle filler. So when it comes to bottle fillers, they cannot be installed on the high side drinking fountain like you see in this example. Sorry, I am having a little bit of problem with these slides. There's a little bit of a delay there, but we have not gotten to that legislation yet. I will get there eventually, but you cannot have a bottle filler on the high side drinking fountain. On top of that, it's not compliant in this example because it's above our reach range. You see that touchless sensor all the way at the top of that unit. That is well above that 48 inches of maximum high reach range that we are allowed to have. Here we have another example of a ADA installation issue. This one, they again installed too high. This is meant to be a standalone bottle filler. It's well above that 48 inches of maximum high reach range, that touchless sensor. They need to install this as a standalone somewhere else, or they can install something that sits lower to that low side drinking fountain and within our proper reach range. This one, I like to say that they got it half right with these. Uh, these slides are double skipping on me, Justin. It might be worth it just for you to take control, but I will keep trying here. So with these, you have them installed above the low side drinking fountain. That is correct. However, they are still above that maximum 48 inches of high reach range. Again, installing one closer to the drinking fountain is what we want to do with this, or installing bottle fillers as a standalone elsewhere so we can make sure that they are within our reach ranges. Here we have an example of a cascading design. One of the more common designs that we see when you have the three different fountain heights, which are a children's height, a wheelchair accessible drinking fountain, and a standing or stooping high side drinking fountain. It's just more aesthetically pleasing when we have it in this cascading design, but this one is non-compliant. And the reason for that is they installed these drinking fountains out of order. Our high-low drinking fountains are meant for our two adult heights. But in this example, they installed it with the wheelchair accessible drinking fountain, that low side one, being at our children's height. And that means that we don't have enough clear floor space centered under our unit for that wheelchair accessible unit, which is the high side on this shared high-low unit. We don't have that 30 inches because it'd be bumping into the wheelchair accessible unit, which is currently installed at a children's height. I will show proper measurements of how to do this in a few slides when we get to the examples of how to fix these issues. But basically what they need to do is take our high-low unit, move it up and to the right at our two adult heights, and then take that standalone drinking fountain, move it down and to the left and putting it at our children's height for that. Here we have an outdoor drinking fountain. This is a Haws unit, actually, that is installed just too close to a wall. So it's very common for outdoor drinking fountains to have our forward approach coming from two different angles. We have to have that forward approach for drinking fountains for our clear floor space. But as you see with this unit, the forward approach for the high side unit is going towards the wall, while the forward approach for the low side unit is going alongside the wall. And in this example, that low side unit is just installed too close to the wall. Again, they would have to tear this out, just move it a few inches away from the wall. And that's a costly remodel just because the ADA standards weren't thought about during the original installation of this unit. So now let's go through and look at some proper ADA installations for drinking fountains and bottle fillers. We're going to go back and revisit section 602.2 and talk about children's height drinking fountains and some of the requirements. We know that the spout cannot be any more than 30 inches above the finished floor for a child height drinking fountain, and that spout cannot be any more than 3.5 inches back from the front edge of that unit as well. Now, according to the ADA, you can have a parallel approach to child height drinking fountains. So that's different than our adult height requirements. However, many state and local codes have put in their own requirements and they do not allow for a parallel approach to children's height drinking fountains. So keep that in mind anytime you are installing a drinking fountain at that height. I'm going to go through and show that cascading design that we looked at earlier, but now with the proper measurements you need to keep in mind for installing these. It's a really great example of just the clear floor space and all the requirements we need for our three different fountain heights. I'm going to be using our white enamel cast iron drinking fountains for this. They're very popular in schools, so we tend to see them at these three different heights. The first measurement that you want to keep in mind is making sure that our high-low drinking fountain is installed at 27 inches for that wheelchair accessible drinking fountain, the low side on that unit. That gives us that clear floor space that we need, and it puts both of our drinking fountains at the proper height. Then we're going to take our standalone drinking fountain and install it at a children's height with the spout less than 30 inches from the finished floor. A key measurement here is that 22 inches from center line of our low side drinking fountain to the center line of the children's height drinking fountain. That 22 inches is going to give us exactly 15 inches from the center of the wheelchair accessible drinking fountain to the front leading edge of our child height drinking fountain, therefore giving us 30 inches of clear floor space centered under that unit. Now our clear floor space can go under the high side unit in that example because it's above our 27 inches of knee clearance. So now let's look at some outdoor drinking fountain examples. Again, these requirements are for indoor and outdoor units, but we're going to just look at some of the specifics for those outdoor units. I'm going to be using the Haws 3150. It's a concrete outdoor drinking fountain. We're going to be using in this example because that concrete arm on the left-hand side of it can be installed at a wheelchair accessible unit like you see here, or if you want, it can be adjusted to be installed at a children's height drinking fountain if you're putting it in a park where that is required. So if you are installing this close to a wall, like that example we had earlier, you're going to want to make sure that the center of the drinking fountains is 15 inches from the wall. That is going to give us that 30 inches of clear floor space width that we have been hammering home today. We have to make sure that we are providing that with the 48 inches of clear floor space length as well. And then here we have our first visual of the clear floor space that is required for the high side drinking fountain too. The generally agreed upon amount of sufficient space for a high side drinking fountain is 30 by 30 inches. That is what we have deemed as the minimum necessary amount for somebody that is using a walker or a cane or crutches to easily access that high side drinking fountain. So we need to provide that as well. And anytime we're working with these units in an outdoor setting, we also have to put down a hard scope pad around the unit, and it has to enclose all of our clear floor space. So that hard scope pad needs to be at least as big as our clear floor space. And an example with a drinking fountain of these dimensions, it would be 69 by 52 inches to have both of those clear floor spaces in that area. The reason for that is we can't have loose dirt or grass. It's just too difficult for somebody in a wheelchair or somebody using a walker to then access drinking water. They're not going to be able to easily maneuver on that type of surface, so we have to put down a hard scope pad. If you're installing one of these with wing walls, it's common to remove it from the path of travel if this is on an outdoor walkway. The wing walls, as we talked about, need to stick out at least as far as that leading edge of the drinking fountain, and those wing walls have to be wide enough to enclose all of our clear floor space as well. So in this example, we need those wing walls to be at least 39 inches long and 54 inches wide in order to be compliant. Here we have a quick lineup of the outdoor drinking fountains that Haws has to offer. These are just a few of them, but different options coming in different materials. We have plenty of different colors as well, but everything that you need to meet your ADA requirements and fit in the setting that you have. And just as you see here, we have options for dog bowls. Those are becoming more and more popular as well, even though they're not ADA required as of yet. All right, last piece of legislation for today, and probably the one that we get asked about most often. I saw a lot of these coming through the chat while Justin was talking earlier. I tried to answer as many as I could, but for the ADA standards, they come from the ANSI standards. And in 2017, ANSI posted a revision, the A117.1-2017. One of the pieces of information that was included in that revision was the addition of bottle filling stations to the section 602 heading of drinking fountains. Now that key word that I use there is addition. And the reason for that is bottle fillers cannot replace a required drinking fountain. you still must provide your minimum number of drinking fountains. And you can only replace a drinking fountain with a bottle filler if you have extra drinking fountains. So you still have to have your minimum number of high-low drinking fountains. Bottle fillers are just an extra add-on. And bottle fillers have their own ADA requirements as well. For example, if you're adding a bottle filler to a drinking fountain, as I stated earlier, it has to be installed on that low wheelchair accessible drinking fountain. Once you add one to the low side drinking fountain, you can then also add one to the high side, but you cannot add one to the high side and not have it on the low side first. If you are installing that bottle filler on a drinking fountain, it must also have that forward approach with the clear floor space centered underneath it, just like that drinking fountain beneath it. But if you are installing a standalone bottle filler, that means that you can have a forward or a parallel approach to that unit. So it's a little bit different in that we do allow a parallel approach to a standalone bottle filler. And then all bottle fillers must be hand operated or automatic. For Haws, we have two options to meet those. We have a push button for hand operated or touchless sensors for the automatic. So now we're going to go through a few bottle filler examples here. For this, I'm going to be using our new Revive series. That is our architecturally recessed bottle filler for this next example. Like you see here, it's matched up with our tried and true drinking fountains that Haws has had for a while, but just with a new recessed bottle filler on there. So everything in this example is fully compliant. It has everything at our proper heights. We have the drinking fountain installed at exactly 27 inches to that lower leading edge. And then we have our touchless sensor well beneath our maximum high reach range of 48 inches. For the Revive series, that bottle filler touchless sensor is going to be right at 41 and an eighth inch. So plenty of room there to be in our compliant range. Now you can also install other types of bottle fillers. We have an option for our 1920 series in white enamel cast iron, and we also have it in stainless steel. You see here that we match it up above our low side drinking fountain, so we make sure it is compliant when it goes out our doors and that everything's going to be at the proper height. You can also install it above a single standalone drinking fountain like you see here. And in this example, you could use this as your wheelchair accessible drinking fountain. You could use it as your high side drinking fountain if you meet your other minimum requirements first, or you can install it at a children's height as well. And bottle fillers for children's height. The first thing we want to keep in mind again is our reach range. So if you install this type of drinking fountain with the spout at the maximum child height of 30 inches, that bottle filler is still going to be within our reach range at 42 and 5/8 inches. For that 9 to 12-year-old age range, the maximum reach range is 44 inches. So we are fully compliant there as well. And then whether it is in a public building, a high school, a college, or an airport like the image you see here, providing for easy access to all facilities by all people is our primary goal of the ADA standards. And I hope that our quick guide so far today has been able to demonstrate the key standards, how to avoid getting them wrong, and all of the basic information that you need to know for this. I'm going to end my portion of the presentation. Justin has a few more slides, then we'll get into the Q&A. But I'm going to end this part just by showing this picture of a high-low drinking fountain with a bottle filler in the Reno Tahoe International Airport. It's just down the street from the Haws headquarters, but everything is fully compliant. It has the right clear floor space, everything within our reach ranges. It's centered in that alcove. It's aesthetically pleasing. We like to think it'd be bad form if we couldn't get this right in our own backyard. So I always like to use this as an example.
It is one of my favorites as well, which will bring us to poll question number 4. Allie, if you would please.
All right, getting into the second to last poll question of today. When was the last time you updated your spec? within 3 months, within 6 months, within 12 months, longer than 12 months, or not applicable. Again, thank you everyone so much for answering these poll questions. This has been great participation. We just super appreciate it. So thank you again. Looks like we're kind of slowing down, so I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. Thank you, everyone.
Like longer than 12 months is the winner there. All right, I want to talk to you about specifically about accomplishing compliance, um, and what that can look like. For us, it's the Haws Revive Hydration Station. This is a newer product from us. A very clean looking, aesthetically pleasing um, device that blends well with modern architecture. This is the Revive. This is our next generation of bottle filler drinking fountains, very high vandal resistance, touchless bottle filler activation, and options for touchless on the fountains if you prefer that method on the bottom. Programmable energy savings mode. I remember earlier the poll question. One of the most important things was sustainability and energy savings. This has a Monday through Friday schedule, Saturday through Sunday schedule set in most facilities. Like us here at Haws, for instance, our production uh, runs Monday through Thursday, and we work longer shifts those days because we take our weekends very seriously. Which means with Haws drinking fountains and chillers and bottle fillers on the wall, we don't need that running and chilling water while we're not here. And that's what that schedule is for. We're essentially saving that energy, making it more sustainable, and also prolonging the life of that unit well into the future. LED electronic bottle filler display that's fully interactive. There are hidden buttons on the unit that allow you to interact with a hidden menu to change the sensor sensitivity, how bright the light is, check on the filter status, all of those things, very easily accessible if you know where to find the button. Best in class sensor, very high level of vandal resistance with this, with super durable, our standard 5874 buttons, mechanical buttons, and a sensor that is ridiculous. It is not like your beam of light, you break it, it activates the bottle filler. This is a time to destination sensor, and it is quite cool. I watched our engineering team just go crazy on the thing. They had like a hammer and scissors and all kinds of different sandpapers and stuff trying to defeat this sensor, and it holds up incredibly well. Everybody knows sensors they're a weak point on public devices, but this thing is awesome. 24-hour purge to prevent Legionella, smart filled configurable filter or strainer. It comes with both, and it can be either or. It doesn't matter. You don't need to focus on buying a filtered product or buying a non-filtered product. It is both. And 16 gauge stainless steel, which is above and beyond the industry standard for this type of equipment. Highly durable pieces of equipment. This is the lineup. We worked very hard on these. We think they're quite good looking, very neat looking, very nice display, and you have a bunch of different options for your various needs inside of your facility. But this is the full lineup. Bottle fillers only, bottle fillers with chilling, and then of course with the fountains, single or dual, to meet ADA compliance. Now, just a quick insight into that filled configuration. Again, it comes with both a filter and a strainer. You simply swap whichever one in for what your facility needs. The unit will act accordingly. It knows there's a filter installed, or it knows there's a strainer installed, and it will act as such, which is cool because you don't have to then do all this. I don't know if you've seen bottle filler and drinking fountain part numbers these days, but they're like, I swear some of them out there are like a 15-digit alphanumeric code that you have to decipher. This is very simple. You order the one unit, and it is both. Our code word for this was Project DeLorean. Because it's fully stainless steel, and the way the filter swings out from the unit reminded us of the doors on the DeLorean, the way they swing open, those gull wing doors. But that's how we sneak this into your standard 16 on center wall stud configuration. There's no need to blow the wall out on the back or side to side. It fits perfectly in the wall. The way we did that is by utilizing that filter configuration, which is quite ingenious from our engineering team, if I do say so myself. Um, Amazing product, very cool. Let us know if you end up wanting more information on it. We are happy to provide that. And that will bring us to poll question number 5. And we're getting close to the end of the webinar. And then Hayden and I will continue with the Q&A.
All right. Last but definitely not least, would you like a Haws team member to review and update your Haws specifications with the most up-to-date information? Yes or no? Thank you again throughout this whole webinar for participating. We love to see it, and we hope you enjoyed participating in these poll questions. So thank you everyone again, and we're going to go ahead and close this one out.
I enjoyed participating. Let's see here. So, quick reminder, that follow-up email, you can expect to see that from us pretty quickly within the next day or so from Haws. After the presentation, it'll include everything you see here on the right with the recording so that you can share or reutilize this, presentation slides. Additional support material, CEU instructions, Q&A document on there, Revive product showcase invite. That's not supposed to be on there, but Revive information for sure. Quick contact page before we like the emojis always let me know what you guys got going on there on the other side of the screen. This is our basic contact page. Please, if I can encourage you to do anything, it's go to www.hawsco.com. Our website is incredible. It is so useful. It's so well organized. The marketing team and I are working on it constantly and adding and updating and making it even more accessible. There's a live chat function there. You can either give us a call, use the live chat function. If you don't want to contact us directly or have a phone call, you can simply throw your needs in there and we're happy to get back to you. They get back very quickly. Sometimes I troll them and I throw a message in there just for giggles and they get back to me super quickly. They're just waiting over there, the customer service team, who's absolutely top notch. There's their customer service information there, the phone number, email if you prefer the email. Haws technical support is also there if you need them. And while I'm at it, please do 3 things if you walk away from this so that you have some information on future webinars, how to stay in contact with us, new product information. Go to hawsco.com and sign up for the e-newsletter. I would highly suggest doing that. And then follow both Haws and Justin Dunn on LinkedIn. You'll get tons of updates and informations on if you visit LinkedIn about what's going on with us as a company. And insights into safety related topics. So quite cool. Which is going to bring Hayden and I to the questions and answers. We are going to dive into some. Allie put some together here at the end. There were some pre-submitted, some in the question box, and Hayden and I are going to hang out a little bit longer. We're going to dive into the Q&A. So feel free to stick around, hang out with us. I'll throw that information, the contact us information again at the end of this, just in case you missed anything that you might need. Allie, if you would please.
Diving right in. Question number 1. If one provides a bottle filler station, will this require them to now provide an accessible low-high drinking fountain? Hayden, this sounds like a great question for you to answer.
Perfect. Yeah. So drinking fountains, as we have discussed, are always required, and that is required by law. Bottle fillers, on the other hand, are not. So even if you are providing a bottle filler, you still must provide that minimum number of high and low drinking fountains that we talked about. That is going to be largely due to the fact that we can't always expect somebody to have a cup or a bottle with them to easily access drinking water through a bottle filler. So that is why drinking fountains are always required. If you do have your minimum number of drinking fountains, though, you can take out any extras and install bottle fillers, or you can just install as many bottle fillers as you want, but you still need to provide that minimum number of high and low drinking fountains.
Great. Thank you, Hayden. Moving on to question number 2. How do the ADA standards align with ICC-ANSI 117.1-2017 section 602.4 bottle filling stations? Justin, this seems like it's right up your alley.
So, if you're not familiar, I did mention it earlier, but the ADA standards are based on ANSI 117.1. The standards itself, A 117.1 covers bottle fillings much more in depth, right? We have many requirements and measurements that require or that apply directly to bottle fillers in the ADA standard as it exists, but a much higher focus of specific bottle filler station requirements in the 117. Also, a high emphasis on their individual standalone bottle filler ADA compliance. So if you're looking for guidance specifically on standalone bottle fillers, but also how those interact with the full system with a high-low bottle or drinking fountain in place and so on, then the 117 is a great document. 602.4, excellent specifically for the bottle filling stations, but they have separate sections for reach ranges and everything else, just like the ADA. But I would highly suggest looking at it and utilizing it to supplement what you're doing with the ADA standards.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Moving right along to question number 3. If I find something that is non-compliant, who do I tell or where do I go to get it corrected? Hayden, this seems like it's in your wheelhouse, so throwing it over to you.
Yeah. So if you find something that is non-compliant, the easiest way to go about it is to get in contact with a member of the facility at that location. Now, we know that that's not always possible, but it is the first thing that we want to try. The other option is to go to the ada.gov and you can submit a claim directly on their website. You can include pictures straight from that homepage. So that is another option that's available to you as well.
Snitches don't, in fact, get stitches. Go to the website and tell them about it. It's perfectly fine. Give you a place to do it. It's safe.
Great, thank you, Hayden. Next question, number 4. When installing an ADA bottle filler drinking fountain, what is the minimum clear floor space for a frontal or side approach? What height does the bottle filler and drinking fountain spout need to be at? Hayden, we're going to go back to you again on this one.
Yeah, so there's a few pieces on this one, so I'm going to just break it down in order of the question. The first thing is the minimum ADA clear floor space is 30 by 48 inches. Your local codes can expand that, but that is the minimum clear floor space required by the ADA. Drinking fountains have to have that clear floor space centered on the unit for a front approach, and then bottle fillers can have a front or a parallel approach for that. So two different requirements there. Bottle filler only, we need to make sure that for our height, that reach range is going to be between 15 to 48 inches from the finished floor. If you have a drinking fountain, there's a few different height requirements we need to keep in mind. So for a low side wheelchair accessible drinking fountain, the height that we want to keep in mind is at the bottom of that unit is installed at 27 inches, right in line for our knee clearance. And then for a high side drinking fountain, if you're installing it as a standalone, you need to make sure that high side drinking fountain spout is between 38 to 43 inches. And then for child height drinking fountains, that spout has to be 30 inches or less from the finished floor.
I knew that was your question. Thank you, Hayden.
Yeah,
Our
that is, I should say, I know that I added a lot of information in there. We will be providing all these questions in the Q&A document that goes out too. Saw a few questions about that pop up. So just so everybody knows, that will come in writing as well.
Great. We always appreciate the side note. Thank you. The last question is please note if there are anything in ADA that differs for the requirements in Massachusetts under 521 CMR in parentheses AAB. Hayden's done a lot of talking, so I'm going to throw this one to you, Justin.
Nope. Just kidding. There's also there's no real differences. 521 CMR, what's Part 36 covers drinking fountains in the as far as the Architectural Access Board for Massachusetts is concerned, and it'll be, oh gosh, I mean, you're really testing us. It's probably exactly the same. I doubt there's, other than some language changes, probably specifically defining high-low fountains as like a single fountain, things like that. There's dimensionally, there won't be any changes. It'll be pretty much exactly the same, with a little exception. However, just remember that those local codes are incredibly important to adhere to pay attention to, and and as long as they are indeed more strict, very important that we are adhering to those, and allowing them to supersede the federal standards. Okay, where it makes sense, right? Because there's a point where things are going to get maybe too complicated, maybe too strict. But that's up to your local standards to define, and we have to pinpoint those differences, and we have to adhere to that. So, but as far as everything else, the actual requirements, I took a peek because I saw the question. I'm pretty sure it's almost exactly the same with little differences other than language and things like that, and the definition of a fountain. But other than that, I think we're pretty much good.
Sweet. Thank you, Justin. That concludes all of the Q&A questions that we have for today.
Those were good questions. All right, thank you, everybody. Let's move to conclude then. Unless, Hayden, is there anything else you want to cover?
No, I think we're good from my end.
Sweet. All right. Well, then that brings us back to this slide. And I just want to say that thank you to everyone for attending. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for being here. Everyone here at Haws, and especially Hayden and I, are really appreciative of your support and attendance. The follow-up email will be sent out soon with all that information that I promised you earlier. Please utilize the contact information on the page. Again, visit hawsco.com. Look Haws and Justin Dunn up on LinkedIn so that you can follow us and stay on top of what we got going on. And sign up for that e-newsletter. It's awesome, and we don't bug you too much. It's really not like, you know how you sign up for things and it's like every other day. This is pretty infrequent, and only with major highlights from the company. So please take what you've gotten today, go forth, be champions for compliance, and keep us in mind if you have any ADA drinking fountain bottle filler needs. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.